humanity at this very moment is facing a difficult time as the world looks at its first super spreadable virus since the 1918 Spanish flu. That flu had an R naught or an RO number that was less than the 2019 nCoV coronavirus. The RO or R naught is how reproductive the virus is. That means if one person gets it, how many people is that person going to give it to? In these times, as we face diseases such as these, spreadable biological contaminants, you have to think about the people around you, your neighbors, people in your workplace, maybe just your family, your husband or your wife and your children. It might just be you and your dog, or you and a pet. What will you do during these times, and how will you react? We got together with Daniel and we started going over some of these things as we looked at the neighborhood around us, the area around us, and said that even though we live in a very rural area, very small population, probably less populated than over 90% of the rest of the country, how is our population going to react? So we have some questions and things that we'll be answering here, and I hope that you'll join us and maybe leave some of your questions and comments in the comment box below.
Brad, I really appreciate you coming on the channel. This is such an important topic that let's get right to the questions. Can you explain to my viewers the flu-like sickness and why it's a concern to us?
Unlike the seasonal flu or the annual flu, which we see pass and move across our planet every single year, which has a 0.1 case fatality ratio. That means for every 100 people that get this virus, how many people are going to succumb to the disease itself? The annual flu affects mostly the elderly, the very old, or the very young, or somebody with a compromised immune system in another form. So for the seasonal flu to have a 0.1% case fatality ratio, we're looking at the 2019 nCoV coronavirus as having a case fatality ratio between 3 and 10%. It's a marked difference. The Wuhan virus, the spreadability, is magnitudes above the seasonal flu. So if you look at the seasonal flu, the RO or the R naught, the reproductive value of the seasonal flu is between 1 and 1.28. Anything above 1 means that it's going to continue to spread in the populace, because if one person gets sick and its infectability, its reproduction value is at 1, that means they will give that virus to at least one other person. So the seasonal flu, to put it into perspective, is 1 to 1.28. The coronavirus that we're facing right now, the Wuhan virus, is at between 2 and 5.8. So for every person that gets infected, they're going to give it to 2 or up to 6 other people. Again, drawing the lines between seasonal flu and this virus, who is affected the most? The elderly, the young, the immunocompromised? What happens? Well, a person succumbs to the virus when they can't take care of it themselves. Their bodies can't handle that disease. And so they're forced to go into an intensive care unit in a hospital. The seasonal flu sent only a few percentage of people to the ICU. Right now, we're looking at the 2019 Wuhan virus as sending 1 out of every 4 people. Those numbers, of course, are a little bit skewed because not everybody who has this is sick enough to go to a hospital. But you're looking at a magnitude of people who need ICU, who need intensive care, as being well beyond that of the seasonal flu. In 1918, the Spanish flu infected 500 million people with a reproductive value of 1.8. So remember, the seasonal flu, 1.0 to 1.2. The Spanish flu, the 1918 pandemic that spread across North America, 1.8 on its reproductive value. 50 million people succumbed to that. The Wuhan virus, between 2 and 6. So we have to keep a very close eye on that. We have to look at how this virus is affecting not just the other countries that it's hitting, like China, which has done more than any other country in the world, done more than we expected it to, as far as locking down and quarantining up to 70 million people. We have to look at how this virus is going to affect our community here.
Okay, I understand that. But what do you feel the threat level is?
I'd have to agree with the World Health Organization right now, who has labeled this disease as a global threat, a high level of threat. That means the chances for a global pandemic are high. So what really is a global pandemic? Well, that means that you have a spreadable disease that the population has very little immunity to, and that disease is going to continue to spread across the globe, even in the midst of moderate to high levels of containment measures that are taken by the governments that are affected. Right now, we're very lucky. We saw that China locked down those 50 plus million people, and the spread of people that were infected with the virus beyond that has been very controlled. That doesn't mean it's going to continue to be that way, because this virus is able to be spread by asymptomatic individuals, that is, people who aren't showing any symptoms, at least according to initial reports. You have to consider that a lot of people who moved across the continent, who got back into the United States, went to Europe and Canada, India, lots of other countries from China, from the initial point of infection. If they're asymptomatic for up to 12 to 14 days and they can continue to shed that virus and spread it to other people just through their fluid contact and close contact, how many other people might be sick in the coming weeks, in the coming days? That's why we have to watch this on a tiered scale, and we have to say, okay, every certain number of days, how much are things changing? Right now, the virus is growing exponentially, but it's only doing so in China. So we're keeping a close eye on it.
I'm going to take that into my own consideration and put it in the highest regard. What are you going to do to protect your family from this?
Well, like I mentioned before, a tiered response is what is important to me. So you have your trigger events, your things that happen, and you have your reaction. I'll give you an example. If your vehicle gets into an accident, that's the trigger. The airbag goes off. That's the reaction. So in our family, we have different levels of triggers. So if this event takes place, we do this. This does this, we do this. And it continues so on and so forth until you get to a point where the entire world is reacting to this type of virus. Right now, we're in the watch and wait period. Made sure that we have all of our preparedness items measured, accounted for, and ready to be used. That includes topping up any long-term food storage that you need, making sure that you have your masks, your low budget biohazard suits. That can be rain gear, lawn sprayers, gloves, goggles, masks, things like that. It doesn't have to be a $300 NBC suit. And making sure that you're ready to use those items, including going out. If you have to go into a store, are you wearing a mask? Can you do the same amount of shopping from home? Those are the types of measures that we're taking right now.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm going to be doing a lot of those things myself. I know it's shelter in place, but I've been saying bug in place. That's what me and Anna are going to do. We're going to bug in place for a couple of weeks to see what happens. What do you think about that?
Sheltering in place, or bugging in place, as you put it, is definitely a part of everybody's preparedness plan. That could go from a gas leak, depending on which part of the world that you live in. It could go from radiation. It could be a tornado or storm event. Could be ash fallout from a volcano. Really, no matter what it is, sheltering in place is an important part of every preparedness plan. And I think that the amount of information and misinformation that we're seeing with the coronavirus right now, it dictates a need to watch and wait. And if you have the ability to do that from your own home, then that's a perfect way to do that. You can watch and see what is happening, and you can take those couple of days and reflect on the change. Is it getting worse and spreading further? Has it spread close to home? Is my local area doing things to protect from this? And if it's getting better, after another couple of days pass, you take stock of it again. Okay, is it getting better after another couple of days? Are they controlling it? Or is it spreading out of control? So sheltering in place gives you that ability to really look and see, okay, I'm safe here, not exposed to the virus. Because the real danger comes when the number of ICU beds that are available at local hospitals becomes non-existent. Those people are just left to deal with their virus themselves or not. Deciding when you're going to shelter in place is an important part. Deciding if you have enough food stores. Do you have the ability to shelter in place? Can you take the time off of work right now to kind of watch and see what happens? Can you take the kids out of school and just go on an impromptu vacation? Just so happens that this vacation is to your house. We're given this idea that it's okay to take 2 weeks off to go to Disney World, but it would be shunned upon to take 2 weeks off to watch and make sure that a serious event is not taking place that would affect your life, your livelihood, and the ability of your family to thrive. So we have to get away from that social programming that says it's okay to go spend all your earnings, all your net profit at Disney World, and it's not okay to be safe at home, and say, okay, I'm going to take my time right now and just watch and wait and see what happens. If you have that ability, that's a great time to do it because it'll give you the chance to just watch and wait. If you don't, of course, you have to set up your own trigger and event system and say, when this happens, I'm going to suffer the economic loss or the social exposure loss. I'm going to make sure that me and my family are safe.
How long do you think we should protect ourselves?
Well, every day that new information comes into the spectrum from people across the world, and I'm talking real credible information, just because I say it or somebody else on Twitter or YouTube or Instagram or even a news outlet says it, doesn't mean that that's true. You have to look to the root of the information. Are physicians saying this? Because no physician, or at least no group of physicians from different organizations at different hospitals, is going to be capable of giving the same false story. If they're all giving the same story, then you can look at that and you can judge and discern and say, okay, well, that's probably actually what is happening. And I'll give you an example. You have news organizations saying, look, there's only X number of people who have succumbed to this virus. Look at how many people succumb to the flu every year. Yes, when you look at the flu at the end of the year, if you look at the flu over a 15-day period, the flu looks nothing like this coronavirus. The flu looks like a sniffle compared to this. But news organizations will run with it and they'll say, look, this is nothing, don't worry about it. And others will say, it's the end of the world, really worry about it. So you have to take all of your information gathering into perspective and then take your day at a time and see what kind of information you can get the next day and make your best course of action, your best judgment on your future based on that information. For me and my family, it's a 3-day, a 72-hour period. We look at the next 72 hours and we reflect on what has happened. Is the trend of infected, cured, or at least discharged, and lives lost continuing to increase on an exponential level? If it is, I'll make my judgment on that. Are there cases local to me, or at least near me in my region? If they are, I'll make judgments based on that. So every day it becomes fact-finding and information really backing up and making sure that the information that you are getting or giving is true and you're getting it from credible sources. Never trust anybody who just says it anywhere, whether that's a newspaper, online, over the phone. We have the ability right now, because we have infrastructure, that we can go and look at and seek after information from sources there that are disconnected and have no reason to be telling the same false story.
Doesn't seem like that long a time to protect ourselves for the threat level that it is. So that is definitely awesome. So what's your best advice for my viewers?
My best advice would be to take this event like any other measure of preparedness. Make sure that you and your family have enough food storage on hand that you can last a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, really whatever you can afford. And if you say, I can't afford anything right now, that's not necessarily true. You can make your next grocery store purchase a 25-pound bag of rice. At my local big box store, it's around $17 or $18 for 25 pounds. That's going to give you over 30,000 calories worth of food. You say, well, Brad, how am I going to store that? Put it into 5-gallon HDPE number 2 buckets. Those buckets are the food grade ones. You can buy them at Walmart. You can get them from Home Depot. You can get them used from McDonald's or other places that might have them. But they cost only $2 or $3, and you can go buy a brand new one, come home, clean it, and put your rice into it. For one person, that couple of dollars, say near $20 of rice, is going to give you nearly 40,000 calories and between 1 and 3 months worth of calorie intake. Is it nutrient dense? Absolutely not. But when you're expending calories out, you have to take those calories back in. So you're going to have to focus on that. Make sure you add in canned fruits, canned vegetables, canned meats. Make sure you have things that are helpful to you, whether that's garlic, turmeric, your elderberry, echinacea, multivitamins at home, things that can help you stay healthy and fight off any sorts of infections, even if it's just the common flu or allergies or whatever might happen down the road. Next, I would say everyone needs to set up their own event trigger, their own airbag. We all put seatbelts on every day. We don't put seatbelts on because you know you're going to get into an accident. You put that seatbelt on, which is an inconvenience and it's uncomfortable. You put it on, you snap it into place because you might get into an accident. You hope to never have to use it. That's exactly what planning for an event like this, that's exactly what disaster planning is. It's nothing more than a seatbelt. Can it be uncomfortable? Sometimes. Do you want to have to use it? Absolutely not. But is it there for you in case you need to? Yes. So make that sort of plan for you and your family. Talk with them about it using real credible sources and make a decision that's best for you.
All right, a little bit of breaking news. Our local county schools, they have closed for a virus, and they've called everybody and told everybody they're not to come to school. Right now, they're going to sanitize the whole school. They didn't say what it was for. They were kind of being vague. But from watching, like Brad, your videos, Brad, and stuff like that, it's watch and wait. And exactly what they're doing and exactly what I'm going to be doing is watching and waiting and seeing what's going to happen with this because it's the smartest thing. It ain't worth my life. It ain't worth your life. So take heed. Again, Brad, thank you so much for coming and speaking to my viewers. I really appreciate it. They needed to know this information. It needed to get out there. Thank you again, Brad.
Well, I sure appreciate being here and talking to anyone. If anyone has any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment box below. I'll stop by and talk to people who have any questions. Please get with Daniel, and if you have a question for me, he'll pass it on to me. Hope you guys remain safe as always. Stay vigilant and be prepared.